Hello, thank you so much for joining me today for my artist talk. My name is Vanessa Briones and I am the guest curator from Mata Art Gallery. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment and say a special thank you to Nika Aquino, who runs Mata Art Gallery, for providing this opportunity for me to curate a group online show and for just creating a space for engaging with you all on social media for the past couple weeks with the takeover and providing a space for all the artists to do that as well. I also want to take a moment and acknowledge that I am recording here from Sacramento, California, which is the ancestral homeland of the Nisenan, Maidu, Miwok, and Mewik peoples, who are the indigenous peoples of this land. Before we get started today, I'd also like to give you a little bit of background about myself. As I mentioned, I'm here in Sacramento, California, with plans actually to relocate to the Bay Area. I received my MFA in Visual Studies from PNCA, and my background is also in education. So I have a couple of teaching credentials and work as assistant director of an education company called Teach, Play, Learn, which is another passion of mine. As you may have seen in the past couple of weeks on my takeover, I am a practicing visual artist. So if you haven't had a chance yet, head over to Mata Art Gallery's social media and I share a bit about my practice. I work across various mediums that include painting, drawing, sculpture, photography, and assemblage. However, today I'm going to focus solely on the curatorial aspect of my art practice and highlight some of my projects over the past few years, how I got into curating and how that relates to my practice, and then end with telling you a little bit more and talking a little bit more about this show in particular while we are here. So, as I mentioned, as a visual artist, I love working with my hands. I love working in various mediums to communicate different concepts. And I've had largely a studio-based practice and started collaborating with other artists as well. That brought me out of the studio. But a big reason why I got into curating is because I wanted to shift from looking inward at my own work and my own thoughts and ideas and look outward to other artists and use it as a way to communicate different concepts and ideas I had and how it related and how it can dialogue with other artists. I think, there is a very rigorous curatorial practice and a field that you can go down, and there is like a lot of different approaches, and people do that as their full-time work. And for me as an artist, I saw it as just a branch of my practice where I could engage with other artists, provide opportunities for other people to share, while also learning from artists and how to arrange work and how their work relates. So the first project that I did was in collaboration with a good friend of mine, Tina Ford, and we developed this concept of and or. When I came to PNCA, I was suddenly more aware of my identity as being mixed race. I was in a classroom and someone mentioned, "Oh, ask Vanessa, she's POC." And, although I grew up in Sacramento in a very diverse environment, that wasn't really, and I had just come from Los Angeles, it wasn't really something I had thought a whole lot about. So in the beginning of my journey in grad school, inspecting and evaluating what the word identity means, I was looking for an outlet to kind of talk through and process some of those experiences. And Tina and myself had a lot of similar background and experiences, both being half Filipino. So we created this project, and just kind of the description or mission we came up with was and or was inspired by the dialectical experience that is being mixed race. It explores the space in between cultures. Tension and harmony exist together in the artworks that are being shown through the use of different textures and bright colors. Our intention is to highlight voices of people of color while also generating a common ground. We encourage discussion around issues of race and identity. So the idea of and or was spurred from us being mixed, but really we wanted it to be something where we were looking at what was underlying that experience and if anyone else related and identified with that. So with this project, we actually just put an open call out. There was no application fee, just posted it in a variety of places, shared it amongst friends. And just when we had the applications come in, we really sat through and sorted who had work that we thought would work well in this exhibition. And, you know, to be honest, it was a tough route to take, because when you have all these applications and wonderful artists, and we hadn't met them, it was a difficult and long process to try and narrow down what artists we could use in this space. And so that was a really good learning experience for us, that even the process of starting a show and curating the artists there's a lot of intention that can go into that, and that can support or even maybe be in tension with what your mission is for whatever the show is, or your goals are with the show. Another aspect of this project that was really exciting was we were using and looking to a local venue that was used for other community events. And that kind of was a way for us to integrate art and art practices in with other aspects of the community and other art disciplines. So we were so fortunate to be able to do a pop-up art show at the Deep End Club, which just to kind of tell you a little bit about the Deep End Club was established in 2013 and was used as a community clubhouse and online shop founded by drummer and activist Tennessee Thomas as a hub for artists and activists to work together to find creative solutions to the world's problem. The Deep End Club was born out of the Occupy Wall Street and continues to grow alongside evolving movements committed to meaningful change. So it was really wonderful to partner with another organization that was doing work parallel to and in conversation with what Tina and I were interested in. Here you can see an image of a couple artists that were in the show, and the list of the artists that we were so fortunate to have participate. Another great part of this was it came along with some event planning. So you'll see the different performers that we used. We actually had an opening where there was music and dance and spoken word. And it was a really great way to get involved with a larger community. Here are a couple of other images from inside the space. It was one of the fun things about this one too, was at the event, we noticed there was just such a range of people from all different backgrounds, all different interests there. And then as the show was up, the Tennessee was so generous to let us leave it up for a while. So there were events that happened in the space while the art show was still hung. And because we had such a wonderful response with the community, we decided to create And/Or Part 2. And/Or Part 2 was held in a different venue, a space called Junior High. And I didn't mention both of these are in Los Angeles. And Junior High is a nonprofit community art space that works with artists marginalized by cis heteropatriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy. And their physical space is a place where they still have exhibitions, they have a publication, a podcast, and they really focus on radical empathy, equity, and mutual aid. So this was another great organization we were able to partner with that generously allowed us to use this space for an exhibition. And this one we took a different approach. Instead of doing an open call, we reached back out to artists we didn't work with on the first round, and then brought some artists back that were also in the first round and asked for different friends and recommendations so that we could have, a little bit more of us reaching out to artists and have a different approach in this show. Still the same idea of that And/Or, that space in between. But again, we integrated different performers. There was different vendors that also came on this event. And so it was a really, really fun way to integrate both the visual art practices with various other art practices and passions. Okay, so next up, after I did the And/Or project, I was invited to be the curatorial fellow at my grad program at PNCA. This was a completely different experience than the pop-up art shows I did with And/Or. What was interesting about this one is I was part of the low res program. So there was few of us on campus, but we had access to all the different art spaces and art galleries. So we really had a lot of opportunity to show artists in a large amount of space when they wanted, for as long as they wanted. And I worked alongside my colleague Nicole Baker in curating different shows. This one was where people actually submitted their application and their ideas rather than us reaching out, but we were fortunate to come up with a couple that we got to do ourselves. We did a alumni and first, second year show and filled up all the gallery spaces on campus. So that was a fun experience. Again, like I mentioned, emphasizing how choosing artists and choosing the space can have just as much of a weight in what that curatorial experience is as does do the artists that participate in general. At this point, I also began to learn what my style was as a curator. There is such a range in how heavily involved the curator is in arranging the show. With Tina and I collected all the artwork. We arranged the show in all the different places where the pieces would go. We did all the programming. Whereas at PNCA, I started to shift where I got to know the artists, and they were the ones to really have the biggest say over how they wanted their art to be arranged in the space. And I was there as a resource if they wanted it, happy to offer studio visits, to chat through different ideas, to bounce them off of, but not really being the one to say, this is what the theme is, this is where the art needs to go, this is how it will look best. So finding that balance as a curator of how much do you want to rely on your eye and trying to give a removed perspective of how the work best situates in a space versus letting the artist have agency, because sometimes the installation is a very important part, an integral part of how they want the artwork to be viewed. We had one artist who taped out the room and had it all with the dual show, and had all the creative freedom, as well as artists who really preferred that Nicole and I do the hanging and decide where things go. And so there is a range. So from there, I wanted to explore the different ways of curating can happen again. And so I came up with another project, and this one I did solo. It was called Borrowed Space. This also took place in Portland at PNCA. I was inspired by one of our visiting artists, John Rippenhoff, who came and visited our program for a week, and his focus was teaching us how to platform other artists. So giving a platform for other artists to show their work and kind of moving from the space of generosity. And so we were kind of encouraged to find ways to do that with other artists. And so I was excited to come up with this project. It was also happening at the time where PNCA was going through some transitions, and the original studio and spaces were at a different building, and that building was let go of, and we were then relocated to our studios as a low res were in classrooms rather than your own studio as they had been before. It ended up being a wonderful experience. I don't have complaints there, but just this idea of kind of our feeling of ownership over a space. You know, there was a lot of tension when people felt like they were getting moved unwanted, and that was an unwanted move. There was just a lot of shifting around. And so I found an office that didn't have anyone in it. So I called it Borrowed Space, and I put up a sign and a sign up sheet that you can kind of see in this image here, where I just said that this is a gallery that's for borrowing. There is no application for their or curating, but simply just sign up for your slot. I gave a couple parameters of, you know, be mindful of not having it up for more than 4 days, so other artists have a chance to show in this space and, you know, leave the space as you left it. And then I also, again, offered that opportunity if you would like to have a studio visit, have help. If you want me to curate, I'm happy to, but if you just want this as a space to experiment and learn for yourself, you're welcome to do that as well. And I was really excited that the summer we were there was pretty much full most of the summer. Many people were taking advantage of the opportunity. And then I just put a little sign up that said, if for any reason someone needed the space back for their office, I would clear out, no questions asked. And towards the end of the summer, there was a very amicable, hey, we need the office now, and I borrowed space, ended. And as I said in the sign-up sheet, the space may cease to exist at any moment. So please know expectations and be flexible. So just to kind of show you a couple different artists that had in the space, John Rippenhoff was so kind who, as he was a visiting artist, to be the first show, and he actually had some new work that he hadn't shown anywhere yet that he hung up. And I believe he called his borrowed nails because there were already some nails in the space. So instead of arranging his work the way he wanted it, he just hung it on the nails that were already there. And we had a little reception and discussion about his work. And then another artist that was showed in there was a colleague of mine, Julie Winter. She is a printmaker and does some collage work. So she showed her prints and really utilized the whole space, and it was a really lovely show. What I liked about having this space during our grad school is we were able to do artist talks in the space and have critiques with the visiting artists in a space where you can just really take it up as like your own gallery and consider how the work is in a space rather than just one piece on a wall. And then the last artist who's also in While We Are Here, Joseph Rodriguez, did a beautiful tape installation that moved out towards the window and then into the hallway. And we were able to kind of sit and experience and enjoy his space as well, which was great. Okay, and the next project I was also really fortunate to be a part of was I was invited to be the curatorial fellow for Third Room, which was active from October 2017 and just recently, ended its time in February 2021. Third Room was founded and run by Kalaya Mallory, and then she brought in and turned it into a collaborative participation collective. She was able to show over 50 artists and activists during the time it was open, and really their kind of focus was a belief in the transformative power of a solidary economy and the ethos that art making is for everyone. So she prioritized, and the group prioritized, work that existed outside the market, and was just a very broad range of artists. And she gave me full creative freedom to use the space how I wanted. For at that time, I was the curator in residence. And so the first show that I was excited to bring into the space was I actually handed off the curatorial baton to Pamela Santos, and she and I collaborated and supported each other in coming up with the show, but she really spearheaded it and did an amazing job with the space. And it was wonderful to try another approach of, continuing to pass that baton to another artist. And so her show was called Sorry Not Sorry, and it was inspired by Sorry Sorry stores in the Philippines. And the kind of wall text that she wanted the audience to consider was, if you had your own Sorry Sorry store, what would you offer? And so there's a variety of different artists that showed everything from photography to printmaking to sculpture. She brought artists from all over California into this space. I really enjoyed one of the pieces in particular was this revolving, this vending machine that was repurposed into pasalubong, which is kind of the objects you bring from the homeland. And so this was just sort of many different artists were able to put their artwork in this vending machine, and then you can pay the quarter and get a little booklet or piece of art as part of the show. So that was a really, really fun opportunity, and also had some events in this space as well. And, being a curator isn't just the bringing the artists in, but creating programming around it to engage with the work. And we had a kind of a whole panel artist talk, and that was a great show. The next one, I brought in actually a solo artist for the space, Ivana Dama, who is a Los Angeles based artist. And she and I had met at when we were in art school together at Santa Monica Art College. And she does work that in this show in particular, takes different sounds and recordings and then translates that into images and prints. And so she came up from Los Angeles and did a opening and a wonderful installation of her work here. And then another show, the last one I brought into this space, was another group show. I often accidentally say hi, and this was a collective show that was pitched to me by the international students in PNCA's BFA program. And so these were students in their undergrad work, and they did a wonderful job. There was a performance piece, and the way they did it, they kind of owned their spot in the space and how they wanted their work to be situated in their spot that they were given. So those were a handful of the different curatorial projects I've done over the years. And as we all know, we're living in a global pandemic now. So the in-person curatorial projects stopped for a little while. And that's when I was introduced to this opportunity to work with Mika as the guest curator for Mata Art Gallery, which was my first time doing a completely online show. This was a new, exciting challenge for me. When you're working in the physical space, a big part of being a curator is you get the work into the space and you kind of see how they relate to body and space and where to position them. So I think about that a lot when I'm thinking about artists or how to arrange work in a show. So thinking about it in an online format was very new for me. And then having it be able to be up for so long with different programming and dialogue, and then to work with these artists all virtually, because we were still being really cautious about in-person meetups. One of the things that doing it online facilitated was we had a artist participating from all over, from Oakland, Portland, all the way from Tokyo, Japan. And because it was virtual, we were able to bring in such a broad demographic. I also was very excited that how productive our Zoom meetups were. So we would meet together as a group and really wanted it to be a collaborative process of coming up with the show idea. And so in this show, instead of starting with a concept, I started with the artists and kind of thought, okay, who's making work right now that is relevant in conversation with the current times, that is work that I think would display well in a digital format, so that since it wouldn't be able to be engaged with in person. But I also still wanted there to be some work that is three-dimensional and also two-dimensional and have a variety. So I pulled a variety of different artists together that kind of met that general criteria. And then we met as a group on Zoom and just discuss what is your work about now? What are you thinking about? I met with some individually and then as a group. And my intention was to find a common thread based on what the artists were already doing. So instead of having to make work that fit a show theme, I wanted it to be the theme kind of evolved out of what these artists were doing. And that when you put these 5 different artists together, how can their work really complement each other, and how does that create these intersecting themes and conversations? So that's where While We Are Here, that title came from. A couple artists were just talking about when my work is seen from a future generation looking back, I want to think about what that will mean to them. What kind of mark do I have to leave in this time right now? And so that was sort of the inspiration for this artist or this curatorial statement. So if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I'm just going to read it a little bit now so we can kind of have that in mind when we're looking at the show itself. While We Are Here brings together the uniquely varied responses of 5 artists whose life paths brought them through the Pacific Northwest at some point in their life. Angelica Trimbiliano, Joseph Rodriguez, Kanani Miyamoto, Matt Perez, and Palmar Enriquez. In the midst of a global pandemic and shelter-in-place orders, these artists persevered in finding a way to continue their respective art practices, whether through utilizing household materials, reusing previous footage, seeing the world as their studio, and more. One of the featured artists, Palmar Enriquez, states it well when she writes that she adapted restriction as a generative force for creation. So we'll kind of stop there, but these artists use a variety of different mediums and have a wide range of lines of inquiry. And so I was excited to see their work together and kind of bring together how we may affect future generations while we are here, hence the title. Okay, so bear with me while I kind of shift screen shares over. Just wanted to walk you through a little bit of the actual show. All right. So this is best seen on a full computer so you can really see the work. But one thing I was really thinking about is how in a digital format, can you show various different pieces and see how they relate, but also see them as their own work. So Palmarin did a series of these wonderful prints. And so if you click on each one, you're able to see some title and text to learn more about her work and where these prints developed. And Palmarin's work really shifted and evolved as she moved from Portland to Japan. And she would go and make photographs out in the city. And then, given a smaller space and less access to materials, and again, being isolated in the pandemic, she was so adaptive and took these monotype erasers and carved stamps based on the patterns and images she was seeing on her walks. And then if you go through, you can read some of the different descriptions of what she was experiencing on those walks. And then in this show, this artist, Matt Perez, since his work was sculptural, I really wanted you to be able to see the different angles of his sculpture. They're life size, they're very much worth seeing in person, but with their bright colors and the different angles, I still felt like in a digital format, they're really fun and engaging. And so I also wanted to include some of the artist's own talks as if it was a wall plaque or something, but in this digital format, so you can engage with the concepts behind these sculptures. And Matt Perez is great at creating these kind of personifications of emotion with his sculptural work, and photographed them within his own home space. So just that idea that, we can still be making these big works even under the constraints of having less access by using these like utilitarian materials. It's pretty interesting. And then Kanani Miyamoto, with her work, it's, I think, important to read the description for her work, because a lot of it was this act of guerrilla art installation where she created these different objects that you can see here if you click on them, postcards, stickers, mugs, and brought them into the Portland Art Museum's gift shop and left them there. I'm not sure if they're still there, but maybe worth going if you're up in Portland to check out. And then she also made a great video, which you can see in this digital format, and a wonderful print as well. And then Joseph Rodriguez is an installation artist, and because he has work that it can be temporary, it was excited to include him in the show because his work is site responsive, and we made some efforts to see if there was a gallery he can show in, collaborate with anyone. While we weren't able to work that out, I think this piece came out really well because he left it on a fence in a family friend's yard, and it just really integrated well with the landscape and that idea of something being temporary in this home for him. And then Angelica Trimble-Yanu getting to show her video that was also in the DeYoung Museum. This short film was, this is like, the digital space is a great space to show prints and videos, and her work in this video is responsive to site and place, but also taking these prints that she had made in her studio and bringing them out into the world. So definitely worth a watch. Yeah, and so that's just kind of how the show came together. And as a curator, instead of working in a physical space and creating events for people to come to, it was a great challenge to take the little bit I know about website design from my job at TPL and be able to create an engaging show that showed various artists working in various mediums, but still having it be related to each other's work. And then getting to do these artist takeovers where we can highlight each artist and really engage in an online community was really wonderful. So thank you so much for taking time. If you made it all the way to the end of my talk today, and for hearing about my curatorial practice. I very much enjoy this aspect of my practice because I get to engage with the community and look at art outside of just the physical object, but in a more expansive way. And thank you again to Mata Art Gallery for providing the platform for us as artists to be able to share our work and what we're thinking about. If you have a chance, please donate. Nika does this out of the generosity of her heart and exists solely on donations. So you can either email her at info@mataartgallery.org, or you can go to mataartgallery.org and there is a donation link there. Anything you have to contribute is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much again for your time today. Again, my name is Vanessa Briones, artist and guest curator, and I so appreciate you taking the time to listen to my talk.